So hello, welcome to If It Was a Book. It's a literary podcast where we take a situation that either happened to my guest, someone they know, a stranger on the internet, or myself, and then we turn it into what we think it would be if it was a book. You may know me from TikTok and 130 books in 130 days, which is my most prolific thing I've ever done, and that was many years ago, so I'm still riding that high. I am a librarian. These are my qualifications for how much reading I do and how I know where a story's probably going to go. I can usually predict where a story's going to go. And then we have my lovely guest, Bailey. Hello, Bailey. And
Hello. Hi.
Would you like to give us your credentials, why you're a wonderful person to write a book about an experience?
Sure. If you will turn to look behind me, these are my credentials. For listeners, my bookshelves is what I'm turning to. Yeah. I just read a lot.
Yes, you do read a lot.
Like that's all I need.
And you read thick books. You read monster books. Read
I mean, I couldn't do 130 books in 130 days, so you got that one on
your
me.
Your books are 600 pages long, so that's not surprising. Mine are like 300.
Well, I should just count these as like 2 and 1.
I think that you should. Yeah.
I'll start doing that from now on and see how much discourse it causes. People will love it.
Dude, just so much. But you also work in publishing, so I'd love to ask you some questions about that down the road. But first and foremost, do you have a story that you'd like us to turn into a book?
I do. I do have a tale that I think would make for a really excellent, 300-page book. So if you want to include it in your 130 books, I think you can count this on Goodreads. So I am a tender age of 27. But when I was a wee lass, I think I was probably around 14 or 15, I went on this church trip. I was a big church girl growing up, and I was going on this like out of state trip with a group of people that I didn't really know each other. Like I didn't know them very well, but it was one of those situations where you don't know people, but everyone there is a lot older and has known each other for years. And this is like the thing that they do every year. And then there was me. Right. And I was like the snot-nosed kid kind of running around their legs from their perspective. They were like 17 or 18, not that different. But so I was going on this trip with them, and, the trip happens. It's just exactly as I described. Like, I didn't really get to know anybody there. I was really shy as a kid. So I just didn't really know how to break into that circle or anything. And I don't even think I learned the name of everybody on the trip. That's not the important part. The important part is the trip back. We got on a plane, and I'm sitting down in the middle row near the back, or the middle seat in the back. And there's this girl next to me. She was one of the people that was a little bit older, and she had kind of taken pity on me. That was clear, where she had just kind of adopted me and was like, let's just make sure that you kind of go outside today, and not just read Game of Thrones in your room the whole time on this trip. I was 15.
Okay. I don't know why I was picturing you being 8 reading Game of Thrones.
That is the vibe you should get. I mean, I'm pretty tall, but I've always had the face of a child. So that was my demeanor, even though I was 15. She's turning to me. We're talking a little bit or whatever. And people are starting to pile into the plane. We're in the back. We've already sat down and buckled up, whatever. And she looks up the overhead, and there's something dripping out of one of the overhead bins. And she was like, what's that? And me, thinking I'm hilarious, not realizing that nobody here knows my sense of humor. I can be a little bit dry.
You said blood.
No, I said lighter fluid.
Oh!
I was like, I think it's lighter fluid. And she goes, it's what? Oh my God. Oh my God. She starts standing up, unbuckling. Oh my God, guys, there's lighter fluid on the plane. There's lighter fluid. It's leaking. And then people around us start getting up. This is a true story. People around us start getting up and start being like, oh my God, there's lighter fluid. And I was like, no, I'm so sorry. There is not lighter fluid. I was like, I don't know what that is. I was making a joke. I was trying to be funny. And she turns to me and she says, Bailey, you were not funny. Don't make that joke. You were not funny. And I was like,
understood.
I understand. Yeah. And I honestly haven't been funny since.
No, that's not true. That is so crazy. What a story to have right now as well, when we're in the era of all of the planes are crashing.
I didn't even think about that. Imagine me saying that today. I'd probably get arrested. And it'd be great to do it.
Oh my God, you're gonna get escorted off that plane. Oh my God. So we've got this lighter fluid story. So I'm kind of thinking about, have you read Thin Air?
In Thin Air? I've heard the name.
It's just Thin Air. It's IA. I didn't like it. But thinking off of that concept, basically it's a closed door mystery. So no one can get in or out because we're on this plane. And so who done it but on a plane?
Naturally.
So that's one direction that we can go. Or what were you thinking whenever you were planning it?
I was thinking kind of like a Yellow Jacket situation. I don't know if you were familiar with Yellow Jackets, but I love that show.
Oh my God. Well, okay. So first of all, I love Yellow Jackets. Yes, absolutely. Have you seen The Wilds?
I haven't, but people have told me that I need to see
Well, then
it.
I can't tell you anything because it's all spoilers.
Okay.
But I was going to be like, do you want to go Yellow Jackets or do you want to go Wilds? Because there's like a big major difference in the setup. But I can't tell you because it would majorly spoil it. And I think that you truly would love the show. So I won't tell you.
Okay.
Let me...
Yeah, normally I'm fine with spoilers, but I will hold you to that because it does sound like a show that I would like. Because people have told me that.
It's so good. And once you're watching it,
What's
I need you to like actively text me as you go. I'll rewatch it with you because I love that show.
Okay.
Tragically, it was canceled after season 2.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
They said no lesbians allowed. Canceled.
Now Yellow Jackets can carry that spirit on by having twice the lesbians.
That's right.
Thank God.
Yellow Jackets is so good to have. So yes, I think that Yellow Jackets is a great way to go with this. I love and adore that show. No season 3 spoilers because I haven't seen it yet. So we're feeling lost. We're feeling Yellow Jackets. We're feeling abandoned on an island. This is crazy. I just started a book and I don't know where it is. It's probably under my chair or something. It's called Crash Landing to You, which is not to be confused with Crash Landing to You, the K-drama, which is top tier. But it's one of the, like, their plane crashed and now they're on an island together.
Is it a romance?
It is a romance. Fun fact, they are exes. They're going to the same wedding. He is flying the plane that crashes. So,
damn.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, that was his fault, bro. So, we're doing a crash landing plane situation. I adore. I love. I actually genuinely, I am obsessed with those like survival story episodes. Like, have you watched Grey's Anatomy? I know it's a mom show.
I have not watched Grey's Anatomy.
I don't think that you would because I don't think you would like it. But so I'm going to spoil some of season 7. They're on like 21 or something now. Insane. So
it's season 7.
In season 7, many years ago, there's a plane crash episode. There's 2 plane crash episodes. There's the crash. And then there's the surviving after the crash episodes. And I know that those are like objectively horrific. Some of my favorite episodes to rewatch. They're just like stuck in the woods and like trying to survive. And they're all doctors. So they're like able to do surgery.
That's good.
In the woods.
That would be helpful. Not to be a high school soccer coach.
Right. God, I love the wild. So... Yes, so what do we think is the reason for the plane crash that we're now writing? And where do we start? Do we start on the plane? Do we start, it has just crashed and then a flashback to being on the plane? Like, how are we starting?
I would like to think that in the situation where I say, it's not actually lighter fluid, that was a joke, everyone gets back to their seats, you know? So far, we're aligned with reality. That is what happened. Everyone gets back to their seats, and maybe an hour into the plane ride, I smell something. And I'm like, what's that? It smells perhaps like something burning, hypothetically. And maybe it was lighter fluid, after all.
You can't be the girl who cries lighter fluid twice.
The joke's not looking so funny anymore.
I like that, and I am open to it. I think an alternate option that would be interesting would be...
Okay.
That was, in fact, not lighter fluid.
Thank God.
But unrelated to that, the plane is still crashing. They like hit a flock of birds. For some reason, the plane does crash. But because of was that lighter fluid, it starts this like whodunit amongst the cabin. So like they think that it was one of the passengers. Like as it's going down or after it's gone down, they're like, what was in the bag? Like, what did you do to the plane? Like, they're very, like, blaming each other kind of situations. We're at odds right away.
Right. The tension. I mean, the fact that I didn't get to know the people on the trip very well and they already knew each other. I mean, we're either going to get really close fast or I'm suddenly the outsider.
Yeah.
Maybe someone else is. It was a large plane. I'll give it that.
Well, is the plane only campers or are there other people on the plane as well? And it doesn't have to be reality, but for the story.
In reality, there were other people on the plane as well, which I think is good for additional tension. additional sources of tension.
Yeah. Also, I think it would be kind of wild if, like, at the end, it maybe was intentional, but wasn't, like, for y'all. Like, it wasn't because of the campers.
Oh,
Someone else on
yeah,
the plane is the target.
right. My pastor. No.
No.
Like this like 75-year-old man. Yeah, like we're just kind of incidental to the whole thing. Perhaps the target was someone
Right.
else.
So then do we want it to be that there is a target, like someone brought the plane down? Or do we want it to be that it, like, just happened to this particular plane, circumstances unrelated to the people on the plane, but we don't know that until they're rescued, or we don't know that until much later. Or it could be someone's a target, and then we gotta, like, find out what they did.
I kind of like that. I think that someone was a target on the plane.
Okay, cool.
They walk among us, and we all have to suffer.
Okay, I like that. So we can either go from there and learn as we go, or we as the authors right away can know why someone was targeted. What's your preference?
I think we're the ones writing the story. We know.
Okay.
Perhaps it's like a DB Cooper situation. What? Someone's got the money.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. You know, the guy that like jumped out of the plane and disappeared with like a bunch of money and no one knows where he went.
No. What? Tell me this story.
This is a great Wikipedia article for you afterwards. So it's like there's a guy who has all this money on the plane, and maybe he holds up the plane and causes it to crash from inside, or maybe he is the target of someone else because he has the money, or something else. And I mean, do you have an idea as well? That's just the first thing
I like bringing in like
famous targets on planes,
mob stuff.
It's actually a mafia.
It's actually a mafia romance. I was thinking that too, and then I was like, this is clearly not a romance, but actually maybe it's a mafia romance.
A mafia romance with like a 15-year-old church kid. I don't know if I like that. I'm with the son, perhaps,
of the mafia guy.
boss.
Yeah, and he's got the money because no one would ever target a child, but yes, they would.
Exactly. Yeah, and among the wreckage, we find something new, you know?
It doesn't have to be a romance. We don't have to. I know that I tend to go romance, but our first one was a thriller. Our next one can be a thriller. That's totally fine. We don't have to stick to romance forever. It's allowed, not required.
Maybe there's a romance subplot, but I kind of like what you were saying about the kid has the money because no one would suspect that.
Especially if he was at church camp with y'all. Like, they can't target the camp because, like, blasphemy.
I know. Why would you target these, like, innocent kids who are here to learn about the Lord?
Right?
As I was.
Well, and I think, and this might just be from mafia romances, but usually they're Catholic. So, like, the other, the rival mafia
Lutheran, but that's close enough. Yeah. Frankly, it is.
The rival mafia group can't do blasphemy for that reason. That grammatically correct to do blasphemy?
Blasphemize?
Yeah.
I don't know. Blasphemous. No, that's
they
not
can't
it.
Be blasphemous.
They can be blasphemous. I fear that a rival mafia clan cannot target this child because they are also Catholic, but maybe they hire someone who did, so their hands are clean of it, you know?
Right. I mean, I think that's why it's on the plane. It's like they're leaving the church camp, so therefore it's no longer church. It's no longer. So I think the pastor can't be on the plane. I think that for the purposes of this,
it's only children. We must only target the children and not the adults.
And they're like, you know what? Especially if they're Catholic, they're like, they've been baptized. It's fine.
Yeah. You know what? They're working on confirmation. Like, they'll be okay. It's all gonna work out at the end of the day.
Oh my god!
And they're so young; they haven't
exactly. That I was like, okay, so they're not going to purgatory because they've been baptized because Catholics are baptized at birth, and then they're children, so they're like pure and innocent. Yeah. Maybe we gotta age down our characters a little bit. Instead of like 15, where they're getting a little wild, maybe they're like 13. It's like upper, middle, lower YA.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I don't
know why they're traveling unaccompanied, but
I like the idea that, you know, perhaps this is a younger YA novel that is wrestling with kind of larger themes.
So you think that, like, when they're on their deserted forest area or island or wherever they are, they're like still doing like church campy things. I don't know what you do at church camp. I'm so sorry. I went to Girl Scout camp. Mostly. We made bracelets.
There was some of that.
We were in a canoe.
I think this was. mostly we drove places. It was pretty unusual that we would like take a flight. My church is fairly small. This was not a mega church situation.
Well, that could also
I
be
think
interesting and like lower the timeline quite a bit if they're on like a commuter van going to another place.
Yeah.
And basically they were waiting for them to like leave church grounds, and now that they've left church grounds, so then you're kind of stranded on the side of the highway. You only have each other to blame, but someone's still targeting you.
Yes, I like that. Well, especially because now I was raised in Georgia, so my church camp was often in North Carolina in the mountains. Quite a remote place. No cell signal in those mountains. You get into Appalachia, you're kind of on your own. So leaves less of a trail.
And the Appalachian woods are like haunted.
Yes. This is turning into a little bit of less of a mystery and more of a thriller, perhaps.
That's okay.
I like
be
that.
Everything.
That's more likely what I'm going to actually read.
We're getting into a little bit of horror with the paranormal Appalachia as well.
Yeah, maybe the ghost is Catholic for some reason. It's like, oh, okay. Okay, so we're in a van. We're in the woods.
And perhaps like maybe we're still feeling very... So now I'm thinking, have you read Five Survive?
Holly Jackson? Right. No, I
haven't.
haven't.
So it's kind of a standoff situation wherein all of the kiddos there are 6 kids, so remember, only 5 survive. Oh. They're all in this like RV. They're going somewhere on like a graduation trip. I don't remember. And they end up in like this standoff, and someone from outside the van is trying to shoot someone from inside the van, and so they are like trying to figure out what to do. And I think that would be an interesting setup where like maybe the tires are shot out, or like they are no longer able, like maybe they ran over a nail or something. I don't know. They're no longer able to drive, so they're stuck, and they have to like make this decision of, do we stay in the van and wait for help, or do we venture out? And in venturing out, they're sort of worried about this outside force that is trying to get them. And that might also just be the woods of the Appalachian Mountains.
I like that idea a lot, especially because some of those roads up there, pretty narrow, pretty difficult. You know, it could be nighttime. That's a scary situation.
Well, and then like the sounds that you hear in those woods are like not always people, right? Like you can hear people calling.
So I've heard.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the mountains now. I'm like, oh, those mountains are scary.
I'm thinking about those like TikToks of people that are like kind of ambiguous if they're staged or not.
Yeah.
You know, one of my biggest irrational fear, and I'm not just making this up on the spot, this is something that I've mentioned to other people many times, is that I would be like driving on one of those roads. Because I've been there before. I've like, you know, driven in a little Appalachian mountain road on my own before. And like there's someone lying in the middle of the road. And I don't know what I would do in that circumstance, because you don't want to run someone over, but maybe there's not room for me to turn around, which is the case sometimes. What would I do?
I think I would just
I don't want to
stop.
get out.
I think I'd just stop and stay in my car, keep all the doors locked, and then if someone comes up to the car, I'm backing up. I'm reversing very aggressively. I don't have to turn around. I'm in reverse now. But if that person gets up...
Your adrenaline locks in.
If that person gets up, I'm like immediately driving around them. I'm like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, that's a scary situation.
Especially if you like can't see anything visible. Like, I feel like if there's a pool of blood around that person, then I'm like, they are injured. They're just laying there. I don't know about that.
It's like, why are they there? Especially because there are, I don't know if this is like an urban legend, but like I've heard of situations where people will like stage
highwaymen.
A road.
Highwaymen.
Yes, literally like highwaymen will like stage an accident, and then it's like you stop, and then like, well, the highwaymen do whatever, you know?
That's so historical romance of them.
I know.
But yeah, I think that that's like totally fair. And then that might even be like an interesting part of this story where you're like, the guy who is being targeted, and he knows that it's him who's being targeted, but he like can't let anybody else know. I want to say there's like 12 kids. So there's like maybe...
That feels right.
6 and 6 kids. And then he doesn't want anyone to know that it's him. So maybe he brings that up. So when there's like a shooting, he's like, oh, must be the highwaymen. And so like,
well,
right. And then the same issue of like, do we stay in the car and let them come up and rob us? Or do we like run away? And is it safer in the vehicle or out of the vehicle? And should we be in a group or should we separate? Like, because if he can get off on his own, he can just dip. But also, he may choose to use the other campers as, like, human shields since he knows that they're after him. I don't know.
This is really grim.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I guess it...
Not to take your church camp story and make it really sad.
I mean, it was already a story that invited danger, so I think you're well within your rights. I don't know. It depends on the character of this dude. I don't know if I would want my 13-year-old self to be in a romance with him. It sounds pretty
We don't have to have the
dangerous,
romance. We can cut that out.
Romance
out.
Just a thriller.
Just a thriller.
Yeah. Maybe I meet like a ghost in the woods and have a romance with the ghost. That's fine too. I don't know. I'm thinking about the ghosts.
The ghosts on the trails. So I think...
Who's editing this story?
They're like, this is all plot holes, actually? Don't worry about it.
They've got a red pen and they're just attacking this thing.
It's okay. After this, it goes nowhere, so don't worry. So I think that our van is no longer operational. Potentially, yes. So I think that perhaps the adult driving the van is also incapacitated. So either he was injured in the mix-up, or he walks down the road to try to get cell service to get, like, AAA to come. And, you know, it's the mountains, so it takes a really long time to get down the mountain. So he is either injured in the car, and we, as part of the story, must take care of him, or he is left the situation. I feel like they would all walk together if he was gonna walk away. He wouldn't, like, leave the children unattended.
Here's my proposal, that he gets out of the car to go and maybe find a place to get cell signal, then he gets taken out.
Okay.
And then, so, like, shot with a gun, I don't know. He falls down the cliff, ambiguous, perhaps. But that way we know the stakes are real.
Stakes are real, stakes are high.
The stakes are high, but also, like, the removal of a parental figure, now we have to figure it out on our own.
So I think that I want the car to be incapacitated by, like, a single flat tire. So maybe he was getting out to change the tire.
Well, that's
so
good,
he was kind of crouched down. They hear a sound, but they're not really sure. Because, like, we didn't see him fall, you know? It's not quite as gory graphic, because this is lower YA.
It's YA, yeah.
So we don't see it happen. We hear it, and then he's taken a while, go out, see him dead. Or injured.
Yeah.
But the tire is still not on, so we still don't have that escape of, like, I'm a 13-year-old, I could drive a car.
Right. Yeah, no one here feels comfortable without a license.
Which, like, potentially could be an option for escaping down the road, where, like, we're just driving on the wheel instead of the tire and just, like, really messing up this car, and, like, that's fine, because we're in mortal danger. But... because I think that I'd like the engine to still be working as part of this story. I like the out of, like, if worst comes to worst, we can take the car, it won't go far, but we can take it a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess we would be out of the car because we're checking to see his body. Do you think the party splits here, or do you think everyone tries to get back in the car?
I think that at least one, if not two, of the guys, because we've just been at church camp, I do think it's probably a little bit gender specific in that they're like, well, I'm in charge now because I'm the boy. So I think that...
for sure. That would have happened with this group.
So I think that at least one, if not two of the guys is like, okay, don't worry, team. I'm in charge now. I'm going to go get help. Like, he's... And I don't know that he's going to die in that situation, but he's definitely, like, left the picture, and then he is not going to return for a while. Either he gets taken out or he's like... it takes a long time to get down that mountain trail and then get back up.
He's removed from the picture one way
and
or
I think
another.
that like should slowly start happening. Like more and more people are disappearing. Maybe another guy is like, I'm gonna go check on him. Like he's been gone a really long time. Don't worry, team. I can handle this. And they go down the mountain.
It just becomes this like train of like increasingly cowardly like 15-year-olds trying to make their way down the mountain.
Yes. So
and they're like, wow, they're all showing up in a line.
Yeah, they're all like maybe spaced out 15 minutes down this mountain trail.
How convenient.
So I don't think they can all leave for the same purpose. I think that at least two of them have gone to find help. Yeah. I think maybe one person or a group of two goes up the hill. Maybe there's someone at the top who has a phone we can use.
Yeah, back to the camp,
Right.
perhaps.
So now we're from 12 down to 8.
Mm,
There needs to be some sort of things happening where we're starting to realize that this guy is a target. So maybe like whoever is, if we're going to say that there was a gunshot to the driver, then there's still a gun in play.
yeah.
Not a very good shot for some reason, even though they got the driver right away.
It's like a musket. He's got to reload.
But I'm thinking like people who are near that one kid who is the target, things are happening around them. So like maybe a bullet hits a tree next to a group of 3 people, but one of those 3 is that guy. And then
Turmoil.
the
Yeah.
ground next
Well,
to us.
maybe we notice he's like kind of quiet, or maybe he says something on accident that like hints that he knows more than he's letting on.
Right. And maybe like he is like too attached to this backpack that he has with him that's got the money in it.
Yes.
They're like, so what
Right,
supplies do we have? Okay, we are now waiting. There's 8 of us. How long can we last? What supplies do we have?
Yeah.
What's in this bag? What's in that bag? Okay, we have 2 water bottles. We have 4 protein bars or whatever.
Yeah. Someone reaches for his bag and he's like, I don't have anything. And they're like, why don't we just check? Have you checked all the
Yeah.
pockets?
Like
And he's like,
maybe you have a portable charger.
I already know. Yeah. He's like, oh, like I left everything back there at the camp. I didn't take anything.
Then
with
what's
me.
in the bag?
Then what's in the bag? Yeah. There's a little tension going on
Uh-huh.
here. We turn on each other.
I like that. I like that. So that's when we're starting to get suspicious of this one guy. I need people to have some names because I can't keep calling them that one guy.
That one guy.
So
Okay.
Mob Boss Son MBS. What's his name?
I'm gonna grab a book that I have behind me and I'll just pick something out from there. Okay. I have Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I have Lynn. Sure. Let's go with Lynn.
L-I-N?
L-I-N.
Okay, so Lynn is our target. I've drawn a little target on my...
Goodbye, Lynn.
Okay, so we've still got... So Lynn is the target, and Lynn is, like, acting real shady. Lynn is very possessive of his
Lynn is
backpack.
sus.
He's being sus. What do we think is going to be the reason that the other kids realize that he's the reason that the driver died and that they are stuck and all that?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you think it should be related to the backpack, or do you think it should be related to something that maybe he said or did at the camp that we have to put together?
I think maybe both, in that like they open the backpack, see all of the money, and then they're remembering some stuff he did and said at the camp.
Or maybe they think of something that he did at the camp, and then when they open the backpack, that's like confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the reveal. Maybe he at the camp, like, you know, during all of our praying, all of our worship discussion, small group breakout sessions and stuff, he kept getting like pulled away from like the small groups, and it'd be like, oh, where's Lynn? I think someone had to like grab him and talk to him, and we're like suspicious now that we remember he was like always in and out of the
Right.
room. He like wasn't always participating in the group activities.
We don't
but
know very
we
much
know it
about
was
Lynn.
important. Yeah.
So then do we think that the camp knows that he's got the stuff?
I don't think the camp knows. I think that perhaps someone in the church organization knows. Usually the camp, like the church will just be visiting the camp, but the camp doesn't know the church specifically.
Oh, okay. So the camp
is just a
camp
venue.
is hosting the church.
The camp is hosting, exactly.
Okay. So the church, someone in the church knows. Maybe they've arranged for him to come to the camp to protect him.
Yeah.
And the money bag.
I mean, maybe that was the person driving the car who's
Mm.
now been shot. That was the security detail
Right.
to escort him down the mountain, but they've been taken out. Wait, we're so good at this.
Wow. It's almost like we read a lot of books.
We're putting together to like the most milquetoast like YA you've ever seen. Would get rejected on
Yeah.
stuff.
It's going to be like, actually, I have 7 other books I'm repping right now that have this exact plot.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is bad. Can you go and workshop this?
Okay, so the security's down. Lynn's being suspicious. We now know that Lynn has secrets. We found the money in the bag. So now we need to like wrap it up Do we save Lynn? Do we sacrifice Lynn to the shooter? How do we get out of this?
It's pretty dark for a YA. I feel like we have to work together to save everyone that we can. I think we need to take off running through the woods. What's a thriller without a mad chase through the woods?
Mad chase through the woods, love. So I think that like as people are getting separated, we're dwindling down. Not that they're like being taken out, but that like we're being separated. So we're all running. Yeah. Maybe we get to a point where we're like hiding behind a tree.
Someone loses a shoe in the marsh. There's no marsh in the mountains, but we can be creative.
It was raining recently. There's some really thick mud. You lost your shoe. Yes. So then I think that the group is getting smaller and smaller. It's down to like maybe 3 people. So it's Lynn and 2 other campers.
Yeah. What are the names of the 2 other campers?
Well, you had that Cassandra Clare book, so I'm like, Clary, which I've never noticed, by the way, is her last name. She named her main character her last name.
She so did. I didn't realize that
until I said it out loud. I was like, wait, I just said Claire. That's literally her name. Self-insert fanfiction.
She's also a redhead in real life.
Wait, that's so funny. Yeah, because redhead and redhead. It's just her. It's just self-insert fanfiction. I'm not shocked at all, actually.
You know, I love that, actually.
Okay, so...
Good for her.
I know, right? Okay, so we have Lynn, we have Clary, and let's just throw Alec in there because I like him. Okay. Back to our Shadowhunter days. So yeah, I think that would fall well into Alec and Clary have all like differing opinions of what they should do, because that's very Alec and Clary from The Mortal Instruments.
That is true.
I think that maybe Alec is like, let's just give them what they want. Like if we give them Lynn, they'll stop chasing us. Like we're home free. And then Clary's gonna be like, no, like what kind of church camper are you? Why are we sacrificing this child?
This is not biblical.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it is, but
I think that would even be like an interesting thing to add, is if he then like quotes sacrifices from the Bible, being like,
yes, I like that. He is the lamb, and you're like, that's not really a lamb if he's the mafia's.
Well, and maybe he's like, son. They wouldn't really hurt him because this is a test. That like,
that's true.
Like, what's that one where he doesn't kill his son, but he's like, yeah, I would have killed my son because God told me to, and then God is like, this was a test, don't kill your son.
Was it Joseph? I don't remember. I know who you're thinking about. Job.
Yeah, that's right. I trust it.
Job. Yeah, he's like, you have to put your child on the altar, on the slab, the sacrificial slab.
So Alec wants to sacrifice Lynn, and Clary's like, we can't because we go to church camp and we're good people. And then Alec,
what's Lynn doing this whole time?
Lynn is like clutching his backpack and like shivering. He's like very afraid. I think that he was putting up a front when they were by the car, but he is like not inducted into the mob. He's like he's not doing the like training montage, and he's not like shooting things. He's literally just a kid whose dad is in the mob, and he's like, oh, now I'm in charge of this bag, and that's my job. My job is bag, and that's all he can focus on. At least I have purse, and he is just holding it with all of his life, and he's very nervous, very scared.
Yeah,
I even am like, based off of every TV show I've ever seen, maybe he wets himself because he's just so scared.
Maybe.
And so that's why Clary is like, no, like, this is not a bad kid. Like, he's not hardened and whatever. He's just a kid like us. And so we're protecting him.
Yeah.
So we've decided
I think one of them, maybe it's Alec, realizes the money is the problem. They're looking for the money. They're not looking for us. So maybe if we just drop the money or throw the money back towards the van, if we try to find it again.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Yeah, they ditched the money. The problem is not the children. So it's very much only money. It's not that the kid knows too much. And now I'm thinking back to when we were talking about, like, he keeps getting pulled out of all of the small group. I think that in one of those times he comes back with the backpack. So, like, he didn't have the backpack when he came to camp. Yeah. He doesn't. So the guy from the church who knows about it gives him the backpack. Now he's in charge of the backpack. Maybe, like, right before they go on the little car adventure.
I agree.
So now he has this backpack, and it's, like, all he has. So we have thrown the bag. It's now in the possession of the bad guys. Do we think that they just give up? Maybe, okay, so all of the many, many people who went down to go and get help and also went up to go and get help is now arriving. So we are saved because it's YA.
Now wait a minute. What if we run back to put the backpack in the car? We see the bad guys chasing us. Maybe like they've spotted us. Help is also coming, but there's this like standoff situation. And if you remember that lighter fluid from earlier from the plane, I'm trying to piece it back together. I'm pulling the
Set the car on fire.
Set the car on fire with the money inside.
Whoa.
This is how to take care of this once and
right,
for all.
now no one has it.
Now no one has it, but help is here. It's this crazy standoff, holding the backpack. What are we going to do? Into the fire it goes. We saved the day. We have lost 1,000.
So much money is gone. I love it. I think that great wrap up. So
we
did it.
Number
we wrote a book.
New York Times best-selling YA
That's
book.
right. A best-selling YA book. Your publisher is going to publish it.
They'll love that. Yeah. They'll be like, great. We love it.
Wow. So as somebody who works in publishing, we finished our book. Yes. Now we're on to the interview portion.
I love our book. Our book is the best ever.
It took us like 45 minutes, but we wrote a book. Go us.
We did.
Imagine if writing a book was that easy. It has a lot of plot holes. It doesn't matter. We're done now.
No, it's beautiful. I love it. And I can't wait for the inevitable movie time.
Oh, yeah, of course. Gotta get that.
The CW show spinoff.
I think that it would be a CW show. It's giving Teen Wolf.
It is giving... Yeah, it's giving Pretty Little Liars.
I think that in the book, if we had actually written it, there would have been a lot more like a lot of forest noises that like... Is that the bad guy, or is that a forest noise? Like, what was that? Is that one of our companions that we've lost, or is that the forest noises?
Mm-hmm. There's a threat from the woods.
Yeah.
I agree. There would be a lot more threats going on other than us, like, running back and forth from this van.
It's okay.
It's the thought that counts.
So, what is something that you have seen behind the scenes of publishing that you think that, like, a reader would want to know? Like, something crazy that you're like, you would never expect this, but...
That's a good question.
What was your culture shock when you started the job? And you're like, whoa.
I'm trying to think about what I'm actually allowed to say that I wouldn't get in trouble for. I think for me personally, I have always had this perspective of publishing being this kind of giant black box where like you don't see anything behind it. It's like it is a machine. It is an industry, a corporation. But the people that are editing the books, that are doing the marketing are often like in their late 20s, like they're people just like us, but they have their own book preferences about what they like and don't like. They like to gossip. They like love the experience of asking people like, oh, what'd you read this week? Or like, this reminded me so much of this book that I loved. I don't know. I think I was surprised by just like how not chill necessarily, but like how normal it was and how unmysterious it was when you actually like talk to people. Like it's just people doing their job at the end of the day, and like that's not like a net good or a net bad, but it's just what it is. I don't know. It wasn't as mysterious as I thought it would be. That's probably not a very satisfying answer.
It was like it was the white whale, but then when you were on the inside, you're like, actually, they're people just like us.
I'm like, this is a job just like anything else.
So that actually does bring me into what are your most read genres?
So definitely fantasy. I've been trying to branch out a little bit more recently, but fantasy is the home I always come back to.
And what is your favorite book or series of all time?
Oh, I've got it right here. I've got it behind me. It is, that's not book one. It is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Have you read The Raven Boys?
I started it and then I didn't finish it because I'm sorry. The problem is that I read her werewolf books.
Oh, I've got those too. Should I pull them out?
Yeah.
Hold on.
So I remember distinctly reading this series, Shiver, because the font is in the color of the cover.
It's blue.
And then the green one is green and the red one is red. And that was the first time I'd ever read a book where it wasn't black and white. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, the first and last time for me.
I think that's true. But I distinctly remember reading it because I was like, this is different and interesting. And then the books were okay.
Yeah, they were fine. They were very of their time, you
Yeah.
know? Paranormal romance. That's what was hitting back then.
And what was your last 5-star read?
My last 5-star read, I will grab it. It is over here. You get this nice visual of me crawling around on my floor to grab a book. My last 5-star read was not a fantasy book. It was A Gentleman Undone by Cecilia Grant. I'm not normally a romance reader. Not that I have anything against it. It's just not what I normally reach for. This historical romance blew my mind. It is so good. And I have not been able to stop thinking about it.
This is why we had Highwaymen on the mind. We were reading historical romance.
Exactly. There are highwaymen in this book. They play a role. So, a little thematic tie-in, if you will.
What are you currently reading?
Would you say, I was going to say, would you say that romance is your most read
genre?
genre?
At the moment, yes. In the past, no.
You read a lot of thrillers, too.
Right. I do read a lot, and I read a lot of different genres. I would say I read a lot of romance. I read a lot of fantasy. But I like it to have a romantic subplot, which is not...
Mm-hmm.
I don't love the romantasy push recently. I like books with romance. I don't necessarily like a book that is a romance that they were like, just throw some dragons in. And now it's romantasy, and people will read it and buy it. And I'm like, this feels lazy. Like if you're gonna do fantasy, you gotta build the world. And if you're not gonna build the world, your romance doesn't have to take place in a fantasy world.
I agree. I don't think of you as like a romantasy reader necessarily. Yeah. I'm like, not that you wouldn't be one, but I'm like, that's just not what comes to mind when I'm like, what's Ashley gonna recommend?
Right. There are like one of my all-time favorite series is a fantasy romance, but it's like it's a fantasy romance. It's not a romantic fantasy, you know?
Wait, well, what series is that?
It's Up Really High. It's I'll go. It's Up Really High. I'm gonna fall off of this chair.
Okay, I'll go to my current read while you're...
So this is my all-time favorite series. It is a fantasy. It is a romance. This is not the cover. When I read it, it was like just the cheesiest... I wouldn't say it's a bodice ripper cover, but it was very like mass market paperback fantasy cover where it's like her in her armor just being like... And I even have like special editions because I genuinely love this series so much. So Promise of Fire is the first book in the Kingmaker Chronicles, and it's basically, I like to promote it as it's grown-up Percy Jackson because it is. It's like very based in Greek mythology where like there are, actually it's not really demigods, they don't really care about that, but the gods exist and they are causing trouble and mayhem and chaos. Sure. And so she works at a circus as a soothsayer, but actually she can tell when people are lying because it like genuinely hurts her. Like it causes her physical pain when someone lies around her. So she kind of uses that in her soothsaying where she is like, you want to do this, and then it'll like, she can just tell when people are lying. I can't explain it well.
Yeah.
But basically this guy...
I'm adding it to Goodreads.
This guy finds her and he asks the question, which of my men are disloyal? And she like asks each of them to tell her, and she's like, are you loyal to this man? Yes, yes, yes. And then eventually one of the yeses hurts, and she doesn't want that to be true because she's like, I don't want anyone to be hurt because of like what I'm doing. So she just says all of your men are loyal, and he captures that guy because he like noticed her flinch, and he's like, so you can tell when people are lying, which is like a prophecy because of course she's part of a prophecy. And so he like, this is not a great setup. He kidnaps her from her circus where she works, which it is, well, I can't tell you what it's later revealed to be because you're gonna read it.
I am going to read it.
So I can't give you spoilers. So he kidnaps her and she ends up on this like journey with this group of people who is part of his like team, and it's like a fun kind of chaotic time at times. Hijinks ensue. They have to fight a bunch of Greek mythology beings. Eventually they become friends, and she becomes friends with all of the rest of the group, and then we start to care about their toils, and it's just a great time, and I like it.
This sounds fun.
Genuinely, I have a great time. Love it.
Okay, I will read this.
What was your favorite book from last year?
My favorite book from last year was so conveniently placed. They're all behind me. These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs. This is a sci-fi space opera. It's very similar to a memory called Empire. I would recommend it to fans of Gideon the Ninth, which is my second favorite series of all time. Um, it is, I don't know, it's just really good. If you like stories about like women who are evil and compete with one another, if you like stories about imperialism and kind of questioning that, what happens when you try to build a new society, what place is there for violence in that, like really codependent, toxic relationships between different characters and how that can look like manifest the different ways. I think this book does a really good job of interrogating all of that and exploring it in really interesting ways. Even the things that are not necessarily new that Bethany Jacobs is doing feel very new, and I love that about this book.
Have you read Stars Hide Your Fires?
No, I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It's a space opera. It's a sapphic fake dating space opera murder mystery.
Is this
Yes.
it?
And it's fantastic. It's so fun. They're like pulling a heist, but then somebody was murdered, so then they're stuck mid-heist, like while people solve the murder. And then she has to fake date this other person so that they're fake married, actually. That's her fake wife. And that's like her cover for being on the place that she wasn't supposed to be because she was only there to do a heist.
Sure.
What a time. What a grand old time.
I'm invested. It sounds fun.
It's definitely very fun. What is your most anticipated read of 2025?
I think I have two for this. I'll give you a two answer. I'm really excited for The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson, I believe. This is a high fantasy, kind of political old man fantasy about my understanding is it's a group of scholars that are investigating a murder mystery, which is like catnip to me as a premise. And I've just heard only good things about it. I've seen people rave about this book. I have yet to see a negative review, and it's all from people that I trust. So I'm really excited for it. That, and also, of course, Calabasas by R.F. Kuang. As a dark academia girly, I'm just so excited for it.
What makes something an old man fantasy?
Oh, okay. I have a whole, organizational system for this. So an old man fantasy is a book that you would imagine your dad reading and recommending. Think of like high fantasy, politics, second world fantasy, almost by default. I'm the only one that uses this term with any like weight behind it. Like this is not like an industry term or something. But I think it's like a helpful organizational system to be like, this is an old man fantasy if you like this kind of thing. So like Game of Thrones obviously is an old man fantasy. Robin Hobb, an old man fantasy does not have to be written or read by old men. So I think S.A. Chakraborty writes excellent old man fantasy. Samantha Shannon. But I would say something like Gideon the Ninth or the Fifth Season, not old man fantasy. Anything inventive, anything that's like trying something new, not so much. So, like, I'm reading Nivola right now by Paolo Bacigalupi. I believe that's how it's pronounced. This is, like, kind of the Godfather, but Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it looks like there's a dragon based off the cover.
Yeah, there's, like, no fantasy in this. It's just takes place in a different world, and there's a dragon's eye. That is, like, the only fantasy in this so far. Other than that, it's just politics. It's just old men and politics. This is peak old man fantasy. And it's, like, every line is, like, he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Could he trust the vizier? Like, that's old man fantasy.
I feel like I know what you're saying. My dad does not read old man fantasy. He reads, like, exclusively John Grisham. So that's, like, old man books to me is, like, political or law thrillers.
My dad loves a Tom Clancy. He doesn't read fantasy either, but...
Wait, your dad doesn't read fantasy and you coined old man fantasy?
That's correct. Just imagine... the kind of dad fantasy.
But neither of our dads read fantasy.
Wild. No.
Oh my god.
If you had a dad who read fantasy, this is the kind of stuff he'd be gunning for.
You had a dad, and he read. This would be what he would read.
Imagine a dad, if you will.
Are there any other, like, super specific niche genres that you have invented, even amongst your own brain?
I don't think so. I think I'm very specific when it comes to dark academia. Like, my definition is, one, like, annoyingly pedantic, but two, just, like, excludes a lot of things that are typically considered dark academia. So it's not me inventing a genre, but it's me trying to, like, define a genre that I think... No, this makes it sound like I'm, like, some kind of pick-me, but I don't mean it that way. It's, like, different from other people. I realize how annoying that sounds.
Are there any... I know that this tends to lean more towards... romance readers, but it's not. I promise there are tropes in every genre. Are there any, like, hyper-specific tropes that you love that, like, maybe aren't ones that are normally marketed? Like, everybody knows Found Family. Everybody knows, like,
Right. Classic.
Secret Baby. I'm like, there's, like, random tropes that are, like, things that people know and have very firm opinions on. And then there's, like, really hyper-specific things that you're like, I've seen this in 3 books now, so it's a thing, and I love it.
Okay, I've got a good one. This is, like, really YA. Like, you see this a lot in YA books, where there's, like, a scene where a character has to wear a dress for, like, maybe there's a ball, and they have, like, a knife under the dress.
I do love
that's
that.
like the secret weapon. I love when that happens. I actually have a tag on Goodreads for it. It's like knife under dress scene. And I think I have 3 books. It's, like, so specific and so rare, but every time they pull out the knife, I'm like, she had it all along. You know what I mean?
love that. Yes, I know exactly what you mean, and I agree. And I do love,
It's a good one.
I love a knife under the dress scene. I love a secret passage as well. I love a secret.
One. Yeah. What would yours be?
Secret passage, maybe. There was one that I was saying the other day that was, like, so stupidly hyper specific that, like, it's only happened in 2 books before, and I was like, this is what I like. This is a little bit more on the romance side, but I do love I was sent to kill you, but I fell in love with you. Like, that's a good time.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's like a classic.
Right.
But I actually don't feel like I see it very often, so I think you're kind of onto something.
Right.
There.
Like, it's definitely, like, happened in very famous, very popular fiction, but does it happen often? I also love a, like, very brief fake relationship. Like, not, like, it's not the point of the story. It's not like a fake dating book. It's like, for the purposes of our heist, or for the purposes of this one conversation, we are married. And then it, like, moves on. Never again. It's
That's
just
good.
like this,
but maybe not within the main character's
right?
minds.
Like, but we had some good tension right there, and then it's like,
yeah.
Do we talk about that again?
That's a good one. I love when I feel like this is becoming more common, where there's, and if you have seen my TikToks, this will be no shock. Sorry. This will be no shock if you know me, but a scene where there's, like, some kind of ritualistic tea, whether it's tea as, like, a political icon or as, like, a symbol, a way for the characters to meet in, like, on neutral ground, even if they don't actually get along, that kind of thing. I'm thinking, like, Ancillary Justice, I think, is really good at that. I read the Judy Lynn's book, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, A Magic Steeped in Poison, like, that's a great one, where, like, I love tea as a person so much, so I love when there's politics in the tea.
No, I love that. I think that's a great one, and a great point. Like, that kind of imagery is very nice.
Yeah, it's both, like, aesthetically pleasing, but it also drives the plot forward. So
I like things that can be very, like, they can be merched very easily. Like, because I love to have some book merch, and so, like, in Late Bloomer, the book that I'm reading right now, they talk about a tote bag that so she gets for her birthday a tote bag from her friend, and it says, ask me about my special interest. And she's autistic, and her special interest is flowers. Perfect for her, as she works on a flower farm. Yeah. And Maisie Eddings, who is the author, has a merch store, and on that store you can buy that tote bag. And I'm like, that's in the book. That's real.
That's so cute. Yeah. Wait, I love that. It's
very charming. And so I feel like in the same way that, like,
Impactful.
that book could have its own tea line. I'm like, yeah, that happened in the book.
I would love that. And I have bought, like, book-themed teas before. Like, I have a couple of Raven Cycle teas over there. And I just have a couple of them. Something that's, like, more specific to, like, tea is not present in the books that I have tea for. So something that's, like, a specific tie-in would be cool. We're coming up with great merch ideas for these authors.
Someone pay us for this. Bailey, where can listeners find you if they wanted to see more of your book recommendations and see what you're up to?
You can find me. I'm at Greek Choir pretty much everywhere. And then on Instagram, I'm Greek Choir Reads. But those are, so mostly TikTok, but also Goodreads and Instagram.
And then you can follow the podcast at If It Was a Book on Instagram and TikTok. You can follow me, the host, on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Wicked Reads. And if you would like to submit one of your stories to be turned into a book outline by me and a special guest, you can do so at ifitwasabook@gmail.com.